The scenario you saw above is a common occurrence in mentoring relationships. Neither mentor nor mentee meant to upset each other. But by the end of the set of calls, the mentor felt like her time was not being respected and the mentee felt confused about why the mentor was upset. This is a common problem when boundaries in a relationship are not set or enforced. What is a boundary? A boundary can be a physical or psychological barrier that keeps us safe. Any relationship in our life has boundaries, and a mentoring relationship is no different. Why do we need boundaries, and why is a boundary setting so important? Boundary setting is good role modeling. Young people learn about boundaries by watching adults. Mentors should model healthy boundary setting. This will help young people, especially those who may come from more unpredictable or chaotic environments, learn how to set limits with others. Boundaries are relationship specific. Our boundaries can vary from relationship to relationship. Boundaries are also influenced by societal and cultural factors. What we may be comfortable doing or sharing with one person may change when we interact with someone else. Mentors will need to deliberate on what boundaries they want to set in their mentoring relationship specifically. Boundaries should be consistently set and enforced. As far as possible, mentors need to demonstrate consistency in their boundary responses. Boundaries should be set ideally before the match starts. Planning in advance will prevent mentors from being caught off guard and will also help you rehearse desired responses. Changing boundaries frequently can cause confusion for the other person in a relationship. Boundary areas can be revisited and revised as the relationship progresses, but mentors should demonstrate transparency in setting and enforcing of boundaries. Boundaries can be subjective. Boundaries are not black or white. Your idea of a boundary may be very different from your mentee's idea. We cannot enforce boundaries as a matter of right or wrong. We have to be sensitive to differences. Boundaries can be tested. Boundaries can be tested by the other party in a relationship. This is a fairly common occurrence. Mentors need to be trained to set and enforce boundaries on an everyday basis without harming the relationship. Matters of boundaries can affect the relationship sustainability. When boundaries are misunderstood or repeatedly crossed, the other party can feel angry, taken advantage of, or drained. This can often lead to early termination of relationships. In the next few sections, we will help you understand three things. Number one, which principles must be kept in mind when setting a boundary? Number two, what are the different boundary areas that may come up? And number three, what are the guidelines for setting boundaries in each area? First, what principles must be kept in mind when setting a boundary? There are three simple principles in setting and communicating boundaries. First, do what protects the well-being of a relationship. What do we mean by setting a boundary to protect the relationship? Deciding whether to set a boundary can be a dilemma for mentors. For example, in the scenario we just saw, at first, the mentor did not refuse the mentee's call, despite being at work, because she wanted to be available for the mentee. However, the lack of clarity on what was the right time for a mentor and a mentee to be speaking eventually led to a misunderstanding. Should the mentor have set a boundary on the appropriate time to speak earlier in the relationship? Yes. What principles could have alerted her to this fact? Always think about the well-being and qualities of a healthy relationship when deciding to set boundaries. Having clarity on the time set aside for mentorship is an essential quality of a healthy relationship. Keeping this in mind, a mentor would know sooner than later that they need to set up this boundary. Second, think about the long and short-term consequences of boundaries you set. One of the essential requirements of boundary setting is that the mentor enforces and sets boundaries consistently. Can a mentor answer a call consistently when they are in office? The obvious answer is no. By answering the call even once, the mentor sets a boundary precedent that this is acceptable. Before choosing to do so, the mentor should think about the signals their actions send. If they cannot consistently follow through with that action, they should gently but firmly explain that their action is an exception and not the rule. And finally, how can you honor your needs but not blame or shame the mentee? When communicating your boundary needs, practice all the tips of communication you learned about in the Conversational Approaches module. Additionally, always frame your boundary as an I statement and not a you statement. Say, I feel uncomfortable speaking to you when I'm at work because I may miss your call when I'm busy. Instead of, you should not call me at work because that is disrespectful. Now, let us understand the various areas where boundaries may come up. The most common areas are time, money, self-disclosure, and working with parents or guardians. Let's understand better what guidelines we should keep in mind when setting and enforcing our boundaries in each of these areas.